Were there any feds hidden in the crowd on January 6th? Were there one, maybe two, maybe three FBI agents posing as MAGA supporters or protesters? No, there weren't one or two or three. Turns out we now know there were over 270 feds blended into protesters that day. 270? That's more than the amount they told us about. According to The Blaze and Steve Baker, who wrote this piece, the FBI has acknowledged it had 274 plainclothes agents embedded on January 6th. So why'd they lie about it more than 4 years ago? One of the great reporters of our time is Steve Baker. He joins us now on the show. Steve, great to have you here. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So you're getting a lot of flack for this piece, of course. I know the fact checkers over at Yahoo News are out in force. They've already fact checked your report, and they're saying it was just simply, Steve, a riot response. Once the riot started, all of these individuals then suddenly found themselves embedded. That's all it was, nothing to see here. What do you say to Yahoo News and their fact checkers?
Well, first of all, we have our follow-up to that story just came out this morning, so you can find that at theblaze.com as well. And it's dealing with and addressing the firestorm that happened after that. So on Thursday night, we released, a source in Congress told us that there were 275, is what he said, plainclothes FBI agents that had been embedded in the crowd. So we ran with it, and then the big document came out a little while later, which was the after action report. Now, look. This is where we can go crazy for hours talking about this because it becomes nothing but convoluted. And this is where Yahoo, in their attempt to fact check, doesn't really care about the facts other than just trying to criticize one word, embedded. And I'll argue that word with you all day long. It doesn't matter when they arrived. If they're embedding themselves, they're under the command at that point of the United States Capitol Police because they have the jurisdiction over that building. All right. Now, when we begin talking about this, the first thing that you have to understand is what is the difference between plainclothes, undercover, and does the FBI even have a uniform? Can we start there? So,
right.
Yeah. So the answer to that is no, they don't. You know, this is not the J. Edgar Hoover days of the FBI where they were all wearing, really tight button-down suits every day to work. When you have a agent show up at your door and do a knock and talk, as they call it, now they're wearing a flannel shirt, they're wearing T-shirts, they're wearing jeans. They might have a light jacket on. They may or may not have an identifying apparel, like on their jacket or their ball cap or something showing that they're with the FBI, but they have to flash their badge, that sort of thing. When they are called into duty for what's called crowd control, A, that's something that they're not trained for. B, that's what Kash Patel said a day or so ago, that's what they were there for, that's what the 274 were called up. They were responding and then therefore engaging in crowd control. On the rare occasions that FBI are called to do crowd control, they don't run over there in their flannel shirt and jeans. They kit up. They put on, they have ballistic vests they put on, just like when they're doing an arrest. So they all have them. They put on the identifying gear. They wear their badges on a lanyard or on their belt. They're very clearly marked as FBI. And one of the things that myself and my partner at the Blaze, Joe Hanneman, recognized instantly or realized or remembered, maybe the better word, is in our thousands of hours of video review that we have never one single time seen an FBI agent assisting Capitol Police and or Metropolitan Police or any other uniformed officer in helping clear the Capitol or helping protect the Capitol or helping in any way involve themselves in crowd control. The footage does not exist. It doesn't happen. Now, was FBI there? Did FBI help them clear the building? Yes, the tactical units did. The SWAT-looking guys, guys in the full military regalia. Those guys were there early. They arrived at the Capitol in their big vehicle about 2:30. They walked into the building on the south entrance around 2:45, 2:50, somewhere in there. And as soon as they walked into the south entrance, into what they call the Hall of Columns, Ashley Babbitt's mortally wounded body had been carried downstairs to that exit point, and I, with my own eyes, I was there. I was there when it happened. I watched the actual FBI SWAT team's medics take over and try to save Ashley Babbitt's life right there in front of me at that moment. So they were there, FBI, but not these 274 people that we've learned about that were called up for crowd control.
So crowd control, right? You would think, well, then 274 of them, they would have really propelled people. They would have kept them out of the doors instead of doors being opened for people to come into the Capitol. Maybe the exact opposite of that. But maybe on the flip side, Steve, okay, if they weren't there for crowd control, they weren't doing any crowd control, there's no evidence they were helping in crowd control, were they doing the opposite, which was instigating, being a part of, and rabble-rousing? Is there any evidence of that?
Oh, this is what we've learned since Thursday. You know how they say these things are fluid. Okay, you get the leaks from Congress, you get the release of the document, then you start going through a very convoluted, very confusing after action report, not well written, not well presented at all for an agency like the FBI. You would think it would be better, and then you have the adding to the firestorm, you have the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, coming out and saying, "Oh no, these were responding to the requests from the Capitol for assistance in crowd control." But you've got the president; he's over there on Truth Social. He's putting out, he's flame throwing. He's talking about this proves it. This proves that it was a federal election and that these guys were instigators and agitators. I forget the exact language he was using, but it's readily available for anybody that wants to see it. It's all over the Twitter sphere. But the point is that you've got Kash and you've got the president in conflict with their messaging, adding to the confusion. So
right.
Then we have to dig into this thing even deeper and even further to figure out what's going on. The advantage that Joe and I have from the Blaze is that he and I have had more time in the Capitol CCT viewing room than any other journalist on the planet. We brought entire teams into the viewing room there to go through thousands of hours worth of this video, and for weeks at a time. And this is not something that we're unaware of. We have and we see FBI agents entering the building. We see FBI agents arriving at the Capitol later. What we never see is them actually doing any crowd control ever. They never join the battle lines or the riot lines. They never are helping push the more resistant protesters out of the rotunda. We never see that. Not one single time do we see that, except
Steve,
for
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Except for the tactical units, hard charging through the building with their guns up, and they move some people. Right.
The other big question is, well, did Christopher Wray lie to all of us? I mean, we were told, this is a crazy question. How dare you ask about feds being present on January 6th? You're a MAGA, you're a conspiracy nut, Ray Epps. All of you guys are all nuts. This was an insurrection of Trump supporters who wanted to overthrow the government. There were no feds there that day.
Here's what we know and here's what we don't know. All right. We know beyond any shadow of doubt that there were professional paid provocateurs at the Capitol that day. We don't know who they were working for. We have theories, a lot of speculation. People will get mad at me for saying what I'm about to say right now. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Out of the 1,600 cases, out of the hundreds of trials, out of the thousands of hours of video, and out of all the research and the investigations done by journalists on the left, journalists on the right, and congressional investigators themselves, they've not been able to pin a single bad action on an actual identified FBI agent or employee. That doesn't include the CHSs, the assets. I believe that Ray Epps was an asset of somebody. He wasn't an agent, but he was an asset. The DOJ gave that game away when they slapped him on the wrist with a 6-month probation and a $500 fine. He didn't even have to show up in D.C. for a trial, and was charged ultimately or pled guilty to one misdemeanor charge. There are many other examples of Ray Epps's in the crowd, but we don't know who they're tied to yet. We did a story back several months ago, back in March, about Nancy Pelosi's fixer. His name is Aaron Black. This is an actual guy who made his living working for the DNC, going all the way back to Occupy Wall Street as one of their original organizers. And his whole career has been as a professional agitator and riot starter. And he was there on January 6th. We have a source at the Blaze who have told us that Aaron Black had at least 50 paid agitators or provocateurs there in the crowd that day. Then we have the DOD elements, because we know that the FBI is not the only federal agency. HSI was there. The U.S. Marshals were there. Tons of other federal agencies had boots on the ground. CIA were on the ground. They had their own dog sniffing team. What are they doing working in the United States? DOD was on the ground. We know that beyond any shadow of a doubt, rather. Ultimately, my conclusion is, where our investigation is headed, is I'm swerving further and further and further away from FBI being the source of the biggest problems of the day, other than their absence. And that's another story. They were suspiciously absent that day, despite what everybody else says and what everybody else thinks. But the people that were suspiciously present were elements of the Department of Defense. And that's the real story. That's where we're headed.
Interesting. The Department of Defense. Oh, Steve, you've been really, thank you for staying on this story, because a lot of other people have just been hitting walls, and you've just been crashing right through them with your reporting on this. I know it has affected you deeply personally, as you were there that day. That's people can watch you and I did a deep dive interview about your personal story if they want to seek that out. We have that here on the channel. Steve, thank you so much. People can read the next version, or the next portion of this story at the Blaze right now. You just published it this morning. I encourage our audience to go check that out as well. Steve, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for the great work as always.
Well, thank you so much for having me.